Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to the live stream. Thanks so much for tuning in. And today we're going to take a look at the GoStream Duet 8 ISO. It's a bit of a mouthful. Say hello in the chat if you're joining me from wherever in the world, and I'll be sure to say hello back as we go through. And if you have any questions on this device that I'm taking a look at today that's heavily out of focus, then be sure to throw them in the chat as well. But this is the, like I said, the GoStream Duet 8 ISO from Osee. Interesting device that they did send to the channel to take a look at. As usual with these sorts of things, they haven't told me to say anything in particular. They're obviously not watching this before I post it because it's coming out to you live. And so there's no real like talking points here. Just like all I said was send it my way and I will talk through it on a live stream and talk through the features, talk through things I like, things I don't like, if I find those along the way as well. And just give you an overview of how it works and what the device actually is. And like I said, if you are watching live and you have comments or questions along the way, do post them. And if you're watching after the fact, be sure to throw some comments in the comment section below and I can get back to you, or they can, even better, with any answers to things that maybe I didn't get to today, or along the way I may find things that I actually don't know the answer to. So those will all be discussed on this fine live stream. So I just had the box out so I could prop this up a little bit on the table, but I'll get rid of that in a few minutes when I plug everything in again. But yeah, this is the device. So if you're familiar with Osee, they've been making these small little switchers for a little while now. And I believe this is the biggest one they've made so far, an 8 input device. Joel S in the live chat here saying that that he's used the younger sibling, the Duet, and I have seen that pop up a lot. In fact, you won't see much content online just yet about this 8 ISO because it's the other models that have been around for a while, and those are the ones that people are using. Let me see if I can bring that up here. So we're mostly today going to be looking at this Duet 8 ISO model, but they do have a bunch of other little switchers, like this 4-input HDMI switcher, which is the GoStream deck. And let me bring up a few more. They have the Duet kit, which you can build into a big box, which is quite neat, and many other ones. What did you say? You have the little sibling, which is the GoStream Duet. SDI inputs coming in the side there. Looks quite nice. NDI as well, so we'll get to that as well in a few minutes as we go through the one on the desk here. But let's see. Brian here saying, "Greetings from Excel. I got the Duet. What is the difference to the 8 other than more inputs?" Oh, actually, I don't know if I can dig into the difference because I haven't played with any other devices from Osee at all. Actually, this is the first one that I've had in the studio at all. So maybe others will have a good answer, or maybe as I go through the features, you will see some differences yourself. Quick little tour though. All the buttons here, 8 sort of source buttons. So 8 inputs is kind of the wrong word, right? It's 8 sources. We'll get to that. And then you have some media player, super source, transition buttons. You have DSKs and keys. You have playback, which is quite cool, recordings, macros and scene buttons. Maybe we'll get into those. Audio mixing, and then outputs selection, and then a big old live button for going live. And let's just spin it around and take a look at the inputs, the inputs and the outputs on the top. My camera doesn't have autofocus, so I'm very slowly adjusting it on a shaky thing. Anyway, so here's all the I/O on the back of the device. Then you have those 2 XLR mic inputs, which is lovely to see. Nice big inputs. Ethernet connection for connecting up to the local network for other sources, but also of course for live streaming all through the internet. A couple of USBs. I do have one that I'll connect up for the recording in a minute, and 2 more microphones here, which are like the sort of headphone style 3.5mm inputs, which is lovely to have. Beside that are the 4 inputs. Now, you will see 8 total connections here, But in my testing, it's input 1, 2, 3, and 4, and you choose between HDMI or SDI. Again, that I'm hoping is wrong at some point, but that is what I'm finding right now. So you really, in terms of physical SDI or HDMI inputs, you do have 4 at the same time, and it will auto switch. It says between those if it detects one on one connected. So I connected up 4 HDMIs earlier, or 3 HDMIs earlier, and it knows that there's a HDMI connection coming in there, right? And then you have 3 outputs, 1 over SDI, and then 2 more over HDMI, and those all can be used at the same time, which is lovely. Ooh, and a little power button, which I will say is actually quite difficult to accidentally turn off and on, so that's nice. Of course, you could bump it and turn it off by accident, but I feel it's not so easy. Oh yeah, and the headphones, 3.5mm, right there. So I feel like in terms of I/O, it does actually have all the things you want, or it has many of the options. A little SD card reader for loading in and out things, some fans, and all that good stuff on it as well. All right, so let's get rid of the box because there's nothing interesting about a box. And I'm just going to throw that behind me, and then I'll just focus up the old camera one last time, and I'll not mess with it anymore. I promise. There we go. Come on, camera. Shake it, cam. Beautiful. So, what better thing to do than turn it on and see how it works? John here in the chat saying, yes, 8 sources, in quotation marks. 5 to 8 need to be assigned to NDI or other sources, not HDMI or SDI. Yeah, that was a surprise to me. I was hoping 8 HDMI or SDI sources would be lovely, but I guess there are maybe reasons built in that that's not so possible, or maybe they figured that people would only want that. I'm actually not too sure about that. I'll have to ask them what their thinking was there, but if it has 8 connections, it would be cool to use all 8. However, at this time, that does not appear to be the case. Lockable power connection being connected right now, and it does take a lot of spinning to get in there, but that's fine. You want it to be secure. I'm also going to connect up a few things, of course. I have my local network, but as well as the internet, but right now I'm only actually using that locally. And then I have all these HDMI connections, and I need to check which is which. Okay, so my purple will be output number 3, so I can take a look at things like the Multiview and the menu. So just to go back a little bit, 1 and 2 are programmable outputs, and you can choose between all the inputs here. So output 1, you could set any of the inputs and the program and preview. Output 2, you can do the same for. And then output 3, which is that HDMI that I've just plugged into, is actually multi-views and menus. So I'll leave it in output 3 right now. And then I'll connect up my HDMI sources. So I want them in this order. I want blue. I want orange. Looking over my shoulder here to remember what way they're plugged in on the other end. That's the orange one. And then finally, I have green. Watching someone plug in cables is always a treat. That's that. All plugged in. So that's all I have for right now. That'll be fine. And I'll just flick on the on switch. Listen to it boot up as it powers through the fans. I actually did a firmware update earlier, and they used these buttons nicely to show the progress of the firmware update. It was sort of working its way along as a little update session. I quite like that. So it's plugged in. It's ready to roll. I'll actually just change this HDMI connection into output number 2, and show you my SuperSource layout here. So on program right now, I have, well, one of the wrong sources, but if I cut to source 1 or source 2 or source 3, you can see those are the 3 sources I've plugged in just now. My 2 cameras and the laptop, or sorry, the computer that I have off to the side here. You'll notice that the colors are quite crunched. on this. I haven't really dug into that just yet, but there is quite a difference between the Me originally and the Me coming through the boxes here. But yeah, so what you're looking at in this layout here is coming from my ATEM switcher actually. So I am coming right through the switcher, and below that is another camera, and then off to the side that way is the output from the Duet 8. So that's what's going on here. But effectively what I can do is, if I cut back to my overhead camera, I can choose output 1 and what I want to patch to output 1, any of the inputs or program preview, and then I can say output 2, any of the inputs or program preview, and in this case it was on program, and that's why you could see as I cut around there. Now that's just a little look at the output source selection. Nice to have that on there, so you don't need really any other pieces of software to run. Let me plug this back into output 3 simultaneously. You can make all those changes right here from the box, which I love. Really nice. John here saying the other Osee switchers have lots of color space options in the menus. I suspect the gamma issue can be corrected there. You're right, I did see that in the menu. So let's head back into the menu. This is a nice thing that we can fix while we're here. In fact, I'm just going to go full screen on what is now the multi-view output of that Duet 8. So you can see whenever John moves out of the way, thank you, John, you can see my 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 sources showing up there. I wouldn't say it's high frame rate, the sources, and I think, I can check in a minute, but I think everything is set to the same frame rate, 1080p 60 across the board here. I don't think it's necessarily a frame rate issue. But it's not as high frame rate in the preview windows as I would like, but it's not too choppy either. So I'm not terribly worried about that. It's not distracting. I took a look at the Rodecaster a few weeks ago on the channel here, and I felt like it was low enough frame rate that it was distracting. So this, I think, is not too bad actually. It is quite delayed though, but that may be for other production reasons here because I'm running everything through vMix. We'll do a little test on that later. But yes, I have all my inputs there. And in fact, if I show you the box here, you have a multi-view button, MV button right on the center there. So I can press that, and what it does is it jumps between two separate multi-view layouts. So you have the huge preview top left, program top right, with the inputs and sources on the bottom. Or if you press it again, it shuffles to the other multi-view version, which shows you a lot more inputs, of course. You've got all 8 of your sources, and then you have the preview, which is just popped down below the program. You have that multi-view looking, no, what's it called? MultiSource option, and then you have the media player, but it hides media player 2, and now you can see media player. Yeah, I imagine if you're going to use this, you're going to be pressing this button a lot just to find your sources. And I don't think in the menu built in here, there's a way to change that. So you're going to have to just live with that. And then finally in the bottom right hand corner there is like the audio and recording and sort of status indications, so you know what's what on the device. Quite small on my screen here, but if you had it on a big screen, it would be probably perfectly fine to see. So the menu, there is a menu button right on the device, right next to the multi-view button I just showed. There's a little menu button here, and this only in my testing comes out on number 3, output number 3. So you can see here the menu sort of takes over those bottom 2 boxes on the multi-view. But again, I actually do like whenever menus are built right into these devices. They're a little bit fiddly to use, but I don't mind it because then you just get to use all the menu options, so it can work out nicely. As of right now, today, making this live stream, there's no support for this device in the Mac and Windows app, so there's nothing I can do in terms of controlling it through the app. Last I heard, at least, unless somebody in the chat knows better, but that's on the website it still says that too, so I'm sure they're working on that. I'm sure that's going to come out. I can't see why they wouldn't be working hard to get that out there, but right now we're going to stick to doing everything on the device rather than jumping into any software to make any of these changes. So that's why I'm constantly jumping around here and moving the menu on and off screen. I don't think we need to go through all of these, but color generators effectively, And I'm just using this little dial here on the device to navigate the menu and clicking on it to make changes. But I have my color sources or color generators, so to speak. We'll skip that. MultiSource, which is the way of building a sort of layout that you can see there. It's called S/source with the red background. In fact, they have templates built in here, so I can choose one of these, like this very classic, presenter speaking and presentation mode, which is it's nice to have these little templates built in again. Something that other switchers don't have that I end up making an app that does instead. So I like to see that. Jumping over MultiSource, we have keys and downstream keys and sort of chroma keying style options. We have transitions, auto switching, which is really nice. I don't think I can really show that since I only really have one active source, but effectively what you can do is set up your audio sources A and B and set up some video mapping, A and B mapping, and then when someone speaks on audio A, it'll cut to source A, audio B, it'll cut to source B, or if both people are talking, or neither, I guess, it'll cut to your source 3 or whatever source, of course, you could choose here. So you have that safety shot, and then you have your two individual speakers. Quite a nice little feature to have built in, actually. Audio mixer options, media player, where you can load in images and stuff. I've added a few images before we went live here today. So I have a red background, a classic color bars background as well. I have macros and scenes, so you can do things like quickly recall a bunch of settings without having to jump in and press all the buttons again. Playback, one of the, I think, nicest little features built into this, which is being able to play back clips. We'll come back to that as well. And of course, recording and live streaming. You can do 3 channels of live streaming at the same time. And recording, of course, you can do your standard recording, the program record, but you can also do ISO records of up to 8 sources. And we can press record in a minute and see if that works and how it looks. That brings us to inputs. Now, this is what we mentioned earlier in the stream here, where you have those 8 physical inputs on the back, and you have 8 source buttons on the front. However, if we look back on the menu here, you'll notice if I jump into input number 1, or sort of source number 1, sorry, I'm choosing between HDMI or SDI for that source. And if I go up to source number 5, I can choose NDI, SRT, or RTMP. I can choose player 1, and I can also choose player 2 and other ones, but I cannot choose SDI or HDMI in this source. So it is an 8 source switcher, but it's only really 4 physical inputs if you're using HDMI and SDI. Some other options up here, you can choose on input set or source 7. You can choose webcam 1, which would be your webcam connection, USB connection. Same for input number 8. You could choose USB 2 cam, which would be like a webcam connection. So you can set up extra hardware connections on 7 and 8, but you'll not be able to use any more of those HDMI and SDI connections that are on the back. NDI. Let's talk about that real quick, because I think this is quite neat. Obviously I have 1, 2, 3, and 4 set up to be HDMIs, and even if I choose SDI on those, it still works as HDMI because it's got HDMI connections coming into the back, and it's sort of auto switching to the HDMI because it knows what's in there. Let me go back to this shot here where you can see me and the device and the menu at the same time. So I have those set up, but I can back to the menu. I can go to input number 5 and choose NDI, and I can actually do that for inputs 5, 6, 7, and 8. Choose that NDI settings there, which is quite nice. And if I back out of that, it took me a few minutes to get this working before, but I think I got it working just fine. I have my phone here, and on it I have the NDI webcam. Oh, and it's already working. Look at that. That's beautiful. So if I show you my overhead camera. This is the NDI webcam app for iOS. And if I go back into my sort of multi-view layout here, it's already working because I did set this up before the fact. But in I was just thinking there, where in the world did I set this up at? In inputs, oh yeah, of course. In inputs, I've chosen my source selections, right? And then down a couple of steps, I can choose my NDI selections. Now it does show a list of all the NDI connections here that are on my network. Or cameras or sources, I should say. I have a couple of sources coming out of vMix, as you can see here, but the only ones I couldn't actually get those to work, and I think that was just some settings I had messed up in vMix. They are the GoStream is a little bit picky about the format of images and NDI feeds and possibly other connections too. But basically, in the end, the iPhone, I got that working nicely. So if I cut to camera number, whatever this is, number 5, you can see my studio there, or you can see me. Hello, hello, hello. On the camera coming in by NDI, and this is entirely, if I turn off NDI, you can see it pauses. If I turn it back on again, you can see it coming in there. If I turn off the audio, you can see that the audio just dropped. But if I turn it back on again, you can see the audio going up in the source boxes, not in the program. I haven't actually set up audio. In fact, if I go and show you the audio mixer here while we're doing this little demo, what I should be able to do, if I can see what I'm doing here, is go to input number 5 and turn that on. And now it's using the audio from this NDI camera, and it turned off there because I just turned it off. Turn it back on again. It's getting that NDI audio coming straight out of the NDI camera that I'm just over my network wirelessly, in fact, bringing into the GoStream, which is really nice. Neat little way of just getting like a quick shot into the device without much setup at all. The two are on the same network, of course. This one's wired and this one's wireless, but I quite like it. I quite like when everything's plug and play and work nicely. So you can set up NDI sources, and in fact, the first 4 in this case would be those hardware connections at the back, the HDMI and SDI, and then the next 4 could be NDI connections or other things. And those other things could be, let's see, back out of the menu. Oh yeah, that's right. We talked about color space earlier. So input 1, we can have, oh, there's lots of options. It can automatically detect the color space. And in fact, if I go back to my super source, things look all right now. But it didn't look like that a minute ago, if I'm not mistaken. Oh boy. It ain't that. I'm just going to choose auto. It'd be funny if I never went back. It looks good now. What was I showing earlier? Oh yeah, that's right. I was showing one of the other outputs, and it had a very different color space. But the Multiview has the same. It looks exactly the same, in fact, to me, as my other video production setup. So that's nice. Never mind. Color space is in there if you need it, but in my case, it kind of worked out there. What in the world was I showing before? Yes, other inputs. So I have my NDI still connected up there on input 5 and 6, but I'll change input 5 to be my player 1. And what you'll notice is in input number 5, in fact, if I just bring that to program, it looks like my computer, but it's not. This is what I recorded earlier, and it's already playing a little video of me randomly dancing around, looking like a fool. Pausing that on the device here, and I can go back to the start. I can go to the, I guess, to the next clip, but I only have one clip on there right now. And this was all just captured on the device a little bit earlier. In fact, if I cut to 1, let's do a little recording. So I'm going to jump into record mode, and I don't have a USB drive connected. I just have the SD card in here connected up, and I can press record. And of course, it's going to record what's on program in the GoStream, which is my actual camera here. If I cut around a little bit, look at other sources. Let's look at number 5, which is, oh no, was it number 6 it was. That is this pause my video, the NDI camera, and then I'll just go back to 1, press stop. Oh, it loves playing that video. Stop dancing. So that's a quick little recording, and I've just pressed stop on the device to stop that recording. What I want to do next is load that recording up into the player. The question is, will I remember how to do this? I'm sure I will. So I'm going into the menu again, and I'll just back out of there and go into the playback. And I have 2 players here. I can play 2 different things, but I want to do a single play, and when it's over, I want to switch back to the well, I guess whatever's on preview. We'll try that in a minute. Then now I'm trying to remember where it was. Media player 1, media player 2, browser. We'll come back to the browser in a minute. This is the fun thing about playing with stuff a while before you try it out. Then you have to remember, where in the world did I find these things? Single play. What other options do I have? Group play, cross group play. Let's stick with single play. That'll be fine. I want to load in. Oh yeah. It's the media player selection. That's right. I want to go back up to media player 1 selection. No, I don't think it is there. Not that. How do I get something off of my SD card and into the player? I know I did it earlier, or maybe I never had to do it. Is that possible? This is what I was finding myself doing earlier too, was like, I know it's in this menu somewhere, but where in the world is it at? Playback. Player 1. This is where I'm just setting the modes of the players. Okay, backing out of there. And if I just press play, will it just work? No, of course not. So let me load up the input 5. Pause that. So I only have 1 clip recorded right now. Maybe that's why. Tell you what we'll do. I'll take out the SD card. And let's just check out what's on the SD card, because that will bring me to one other thing I wanted to mention that sort of worried me earlier, and I'm hoping it sort of solved itself. Let me load up the SD card on the computer, and I can show you what it does. Yeah, so I've just taken out the SD card from the device and put it in the Mac here, and you can see how the files are structured. In fact, this is the way that they created it. I didn't do any of this work. It was all created. So images are the images I've loaded in there, but they've created all the files for me themselves. If I go into videos 1, you can see in here that I have my video that I played a minute ago, me dancing around, and you can see that I have my video of me cutting between signals, which I just did there. Now, I was worried earlier that you can see in this video the quality is really not great, which worried me a lot, but I'm not sure what happened there, but this one looks a lot better. It looks as I would expect it to. I haven't seen any quality settings for recording yet. I'll dig into that if I can find them. So I have my videos in the videos 1 file there, right? And luckily we're doing this live, so people are answering my questions as I ask them. So let's take the SD card back out again and load it back into the device. Click, click. And it is now back in the device. And if I press Technobuzz here coming in with an answer potentially. Press and hold the play button for the menu selection. Let's try that. No. That just plays eventually. I'm gonna try them all. No. Well, who knows? It really loves playing this video. Yeah, because I have watched some videos about the other devices, and I'm sure there's like a quick button in order to show all the things on an SD card, but I cannot find it. Play just plays though. Ah, there we go. Okay. I knew there was a button. So right here below the multi-view and menu, there's a P1 and a P2 button. This is what happens when there's too many buttons. Not too many, but you know, plenty of buttons. So we have a P1 and a P2. So if you notice there that it did take me a while to find this earlier too. If I press and hold that P1 or press and hold that P2 button, it launches up this player list that you can see that comes over the menu. If I hide the menu, does it still come up? Yes, it does. So now I can see the recorded videos that I have on that SD card, and I can switch to that second one. There we go. And this is not live me talking. This is the previous me talking that we recorded, and then now have painfully looked for the playback button for the last few minutes. What's quite nice down in the bottom right hand side is you can see the progress on a blue bar. I don't think I can make that any bigger, but you can see the progress of the clip that's being played back, which is really nice. So it's almost at the end, and when it gets to the end, it cuts back to the camera, which was the setting we had there before. So that's really nice. A nice little feature to have. I've just skipped to the start of the video, and you can see the blue progress bar. This went back to the bottom. Let's take a closer look at that actually. I think I can do that. I'm actually doing all this production from vMix. So if I just do that, and I can just do a cheeky little zoom in and position it, and then we can take a real close look at the bottom right hand side of the multi-view. All right, there we go. Beautiful. Okay, so now you're seeing like that bottom right really enhanced, zoom in enhanced. And just exploring it a little, you have your 3 live stream sort of options, 1, 2, 3 there. You have your 2 players, progresses, with a progress bar. And if I press play on that video, you'll see the blue progress bar now is moving along, saying how far through the video I am. In fact, there's a countdown on the right hand side as well, which is quite nice. Time of day and the date, but below that is the countdown of how much time is left on the video. And below that would be player 2. If I was playing something there, then the progress would be there. I quite like that. Really handy to see. Nice that they've managed to pack that into the device and to the multi-view layout here. And then you'll see all the audios as well below that. So you have plenty of options of things to look at while you do your live streams. So that's NDI, that's players. And thank you for helping me figure out where the where that button was, but it was right there, looking at me the whole time. Classic. Let's talk a little bit about layouts. Now, you know, if you're familiar to this YouTube channel, I do love a good layout builder or layout way of creating things. H2R Layouts is a tool that I make, but it does not support this device at this current time. Maybe it could in the future, but I'm not sure yet. I'm just starting to play with this. However, let's go back into the menu and take a look, because you can do this multi-source, what they call it, option. And oh, actually, you know what? I'll just fix my super zoomed in version so I can show the entire menu at the same time. There we go. That's good enough, I think. A little bit closer. And as I scroll through here, like I said, there are those templates built in, but you can add up to 4 boxes on top of a graphic in the background. So in my case, I can choose media player 1, or I could choose colors or color bar or black. Could be nice. I would love to see the players added here. That'd be really neat. And you could loop a video in the background of your MultiSource. A little idea for them if they haven't done that yet. But that would be really cool. But if I back out of that, I can leave my graphic as that media player 1 image. And then I can go to any of these 4 little boxes, windows as they call them. Window number 2 here, I could turn it on or off, leave it on. I can set the source. So in this case, it might be the Mac computer. So I could give you a little demo of their website while I'm here. Or I could just leave it as the overhead camera so you can see that. And then I can change the positions, sizing. What is it right now? 65. And having this little dial here, this little menu dial that I'm sort of pressing while I and twisting as I resize is actually really nice to have, because then you can, it's not so fine detail that you can move, but you can move a lot easier than with a keyboard and mouse, I think, on dragger and sliders like this. So I quite like that. And then I can do crop, top, left, right, and bottom. I'll just leave those as they are. But like I mentioned earlier, I love these, the fact that there are some templates built in, so you can, these are, I would say, pretty common ones. 4 box, a bit of a enormous spacing in the middle, but 4 box is nice. 3 box for some, oh, I went to the wrong one. Some little interviews and stuff like that. Nice to have all that good stuff. So I like it. MultiSource built in, and a bunch of settings that you can use too. Alrighty. Then someone else asked the question that I was just going to come to next. Is there an integration with H2R Graphics? And so what they've added, which is also really nice to this switcher, and I think it just came on the latest firmware, if I'm not mistaken, is the possibility to add a browser source to the device. So how does that work? Well, since I can't type into this, where am I going to type into this this device? I can't enter a URL. Then you do have to bounce through the taking out the SD card and adding a TXT file to that SD card. In my case, if I bring up the TXT file and show it to you, here you can see I've just created a little text file with the H2R Graphics URL, and that's the one that I've used. I can zoom into that. That's the output from the graphics that I'm showing in the live stream today. So if I open that graphic URL up in a browser, you'll see any of the graphics that are in the show today. It only works in the local network here, so if you type this into your computer, obviously nothing's going to happen. But for me, anywhere on the network, I can see my H2R Graphics output at that URL, which is lovely. What in the world is that? Lovely. AI stuff. I've never noticed that before. Never mind. So that's the TXT file that I've created. And now this is wild. In macOS, I tried saving it as a TXT, but it was very sure that it wanted to save it as a RTF file, rich text file. So then I had to bounce it through pages and save it as a TXT. So if you are finding that things don't go your way, then that may be why. And you may have to recreate the file and make sure you export it as a TXT. But if I go back into the menu here, and I'll show that a bit closer to you, I can go to my media player, because I'm not bringing in the browser as a source, so to speak, not one of my 8 sources. I'm bringing it in as a way of playing back some media. And typically the browser sources are used for things like graphics, so it kind of makes sense to come in that way. So in my media player 2 here, you can see I have set that up for browser. I have other options like still. Oh, well, that's the only option, but still. And if I head back one step and head down to my browser options, you can see there that I have that GFX-2. My first attempt, in fact, it's still on here. gfx.txt, and you can see there in the URL above that, it's got this RTF1 something something something. It's clearly not the URL that I wanted, and it's not encoded in the right way, so it wasn't able to pick that up. Confused me at first, but since it says RTF, I figured that's why. So I did it again as a proper TXT file, and now you could see a URL show up, which is exactly the URL that I wanted. So I have my URL loaded in, and I can back out, and that is now my Media Player 2 option. I've selected that to be my Media Player 2. I'm just going to show you the full multi-view again, and I'm actually going to get rid of the menu and change the multi-view layout. So now you can see multi-view 2 there. It's just below me on this program feed here. And if I turn off the graphics on my actual live stream and I show a graphic, for example, someone's comment like this one, you can see there on the Media Player 2 little window, it popped up. In fact, if I take Media Player 2 to program and I show and hide that graphic, you can see these comments are showing up, and that is done purely in the device. It's got a little browser engine built in, and it's rendering this graphic. That's not an input coming into the switcher at all. It's actually built in there, and it's just loading up this URL, which is really neat. In fact, it looks really good. They do mention in their help stuff to make sure you have fonts built in, because it won't support all fonts. In fact, if I just real quickly play my credits, I do have some emoji on the credits, and you can see there, those aren't showing up. They're coming up as those like square, nothing to see here, things are not looking good, symbols. So some things that you might want to just make sure in advance that everything works as you'd expect. But if I show some other graphics, like this moving gradient one that I have built into H2R Graphics, I haven't tried confetti yet. What in the world is that going to look like? Oh yeah, that looks quite nice too. So that's how you would show the graphics. Now, of course, it's no use to show graphics by themselves. Well, sometimes it is, but not always. You often want to show them on top of things. And that's whenever the keyers come in. So over on this took me a second to figure out too, but you have your key, which would be like classic upstream keyer, probably using for things like chroma keying, and then you have two downstream keyers. This one, these buttons at the bottom are like on the next transition, prepare this for the next transition, whereas these three on the top are put these on air, keep them on air. So if I press DSK 1, which is here, remember this is the key, DSK 1, DSK 2, if I press it on air, it'll stay on air no matter what I do. But if I bring it to the next transition, it goes white, and then when I cut, it comes on air. And when I cut again, it goes off air. So it's just, good to know. That's usually how these kind of switchers, or classic switchers work, where you can either bring it right on and keep it on, or you can choose to bring it off or on air during the next transition. Anyway, that is to say, my DSK1 is where I want to put those graphics on, right? So back over in the menu, my good old friend, the menu, I can bring that up and go into my DSK1 settings, set the source to be, let's see, oh yeah, it was Media Player 2. That's where I put the browser. Yes, it was Media Player 2. And I can set the key to be Media Player 2 as well, which it already was. I'll leave the mask, controlling size and options all as they are. I don't want to touch those. And then if I go back out to my full multi-view and I enable that DSK number 1, which I just pressed on air there. I see I pressed the wrong button there, but I just pressed it on air. And if I go in and I show another graphic, like the current time of day, I now have my program feed with these graphics on top of it, which is what you want, right? You want to show people's names. You want to show confetti on top of the video. And there you go. It comes up. So that's a nice little integration with H2R Graphics, using the URL, not taking up one of your sources or your inputs, but getting really nice, clean key fill graphics. And I think it looks really nice. I'm quite impressed by how well it worked there. I'm just bringing up another one. Let's see, like this lower third here. Show that. Maybe I'll make it bigger so it's super clear. I can write John Barker in there. Oh no, I'm on the wrong keyboard. John will do. And then I show and hide that, and it does what I want it to do. Now, I don't know if it's playing quite as full frame rate as some of the other browser engines that are built into things like vMix, or of course built into you would access through your computer. But that also might be the frame rate on the Multiview, and that the outputs would actually be a little bit cleaner than that. You know what? Let's do that. Let's try. If I go to output number 2, change this to output number 2. So I'm going to like a more of a direct output instead. And I go into that source. So I'm showing you what is in that source. In fact, let's just go to super source. So you're seeing me and the output from that switcher. I'll cut to another, let's go back to 6, which is the camera here. So that's the program feed you're looking at, coming out of the little switcher. And then if I was to run the confetti again, you can see it all coming down. So it looks, I think it looks a bit cleaner there than it did in the Multiview. Let's have a look at this one. Yeah, there's some things happening that are not quite, but it looks pretty good. It looks pretty good. See a little on today's show. Some random old graphic that I had there. So that's quite nice. Built in. Doesn't take up one of your inputs. And you can use it like right away. I love that. Just reset this back to the other input. Cool. Oh. Let me head back over to my my chat and see how things are going. It's good to get NDI for Photoshop. Oh wait, I turned my graphics off. There we go. NDI for Photoshop, they have Premiere and After Effects. Yeah, you could just play out NDI from your computer, from your timeline into the device. That would be a way of getting a source in there for sure. Can you show the other end, the H2R Graphics configuration part? Let's see, do I have H2R Graphics on this computer? Yes, I can definitely show it, but I need to just reset something real quick. Where is my desktop capture? There it is. Let me just change this to something else. I might get a little so forgive me if you see some multiples of me, but here you are. I'm on my PC, right? And I have my H2R Graphics sort of session running, and in the output section I have a couple of network options. One is the computer, which is 1.27, I know it's quite small, .0.1. That would be this computer. That's anything running on this particular computer. I don't want that because the Duet 8 is running on the network, not this computer, right? So I've changed that to your network, in my case, my network, and it's running on this 192.168. And that shows the URL in here as 192.168, etc., etc. And this is the URL that I can copy and paste into a TXT file and load that up in my SD card. So there's actually not that much to it in terms of the H2R Graphics side setup. But if I do take out the SD card again, taking it out of the Duet 8 and gracefully plugging it into my Mac, I can go back to that Mac input there, show you that, and you'll see that when the SD card pops up, I go into this upload URL folder. So now I'm in that upload URL folder, which was created by the GoStream whenever I plugged in the SD card. I have that gfx.txt file, and that's the one I showed you a minute ago. If I open that up, you can see there that it has the URL, the same as what was in H2R Graphics. 192, 168, 152, 4001. So all you really need to make sure is that H2R Graphics and the Osee Duet 8, or the other ones that have browser support, if there are any, are on the same network and on the same 192.168.1 in my case. And they can talk to each other and see each other in that way. So that works quite nicely. Thank you for asking about the other side of the setup, because sometimes it's not that clear. Bulls Promo TV says, but wouldn't NDI bring the transparency background from Photoshop for an overlay? It could. NDI can support transparency. However, I'm trying to think, if I go into the Multiview again here, remembering that the DSK source needs to be one of the cameras, so then you could set it up to be the input number 6, for example, which is the one I had NDI coming in on, and the key could be input number 6, and presuming that this device supports NDI with transparency, which I don't think I saw any settings for, but it might do that out of the box without me realizing it, then yes, that could work. But again, I don't know if it sort of supports NDI transparency, so I'd have to try that. I don't think I have any NDI transparency that I can try, but perhaps someone in the chat has. Akoda on air, I missed the beginning. Did you talk about how many outputs it had? I did talk about how many outputs it has. It has 1 SDI and 2 HDMIs. 1 and 2 are programmable from the top, and 3, which is this HDMI, is for the multiview, which is what you're looking at here. And I can cycle through different multiviews and go into the menu, etc., etc. You can always catch up later on all the stuff you missed. I forgive you for being here late. All good. All right, did I cover everything that I wanted to cover? I think I did. But any last questions are welcome before I, call it a day and head out for the day. You know what? I'm just going to load up. I always feel like whenever you finish a live stream, you always go back and like within minutes realize those things you wanted to talk about. Okay, well, yeah, of course, the name, the feature that's in the name, ISO. We only recorded a single source earlier because I wanted to test out the ability to record and get that clip. So now I have my SSD on the table here, and I'll plug that into one of the USBs. There we go. And now what I can do with SSD is do an ISO record. So they do have this record button in the top right, which I showed earlier, record and stop, but they have an ISO button specifically. When I press, you can see now it's in record mode and it's recording ISOs. If I head back into my multiview, or into the sort of multiview setup here, into the menu, and I go down to record and record ISO channels, you can see that I can turn on and off all of these channels. So you could save some space. If you know you're only going to use like 4 sources, you could save some space and turn those off. But in my case, I have them all switched on. And it will just do like a black recording of nothing. If you leave them enabled and there's nothing connected. But yes, I have recorded now for some time, and I'll press stop to stop that ISO recording. It takes a second or two just to, wrap up all those files. And now, if I lean across my desk and plug in that SSD back into my Mac, I can show you what's going on in the Mac. Let me see. Let me just open up the file first, since there's loads of nonsense on that SSD. Okay, I have an SSD record file. Or sorry, ISO record file that's on that SSD that I just loaded in there. And in there I have GoStream 1, 2, and 3. These are the recorded files that I've tried today. 1 and 2 were before the show. And then, in fact, you can see here that I did a ISO record of 4 inputs plus the program when I didn't have anything connected. So it's all just a few seconds of nothingness. But if I go into GoStream 3, this is looking a little bit better. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 sources and the program record as well. I guess I didn't record anything on program. Lovely. But I do have, wait, let me just check that. Did I not record anything? Yeah, okay, nothing was on program. But that's fine because I do have the ISO recordings, right? Oh, you can hear me talking in the background. Let me silence that computer. So that's the input number 1, whatever was on source 1, is got its own ISO. This is what you'd expect, right? It's getting isolated shots of all of the sources. So that's 1. 2 was the overhead camera, which is great. 3 was the computer, which I never used during that time. 4 was nothing, because I had nothing connected to 4, I guess. And then 5 was the video player. So if anything was played back on that video player, it would have happened here, although I never pressed play, so there's nothing there. 6 was the NDI feed, but I had the camera set on the table, so you didn't see anything. And then the rest are black because 7 and 8 had nothing connected. May as well just turn those off. And program, well, there was nothing on program. But in theory, all of those ISOs are living there and ready to be used when you need them. So that's quite nice. Having an ISO recorder in this little box, up to 8 sources plus program, and you can play back clips and configure the whole device from the device, basically, except for a few little text files. A whole lot of stuff jammed in here. All right, last minute questions. And before I call it a day, audio setup. Can the 2 XLR inputs be switched to line level? Great question. I don't know. Let's find out. I'll go back into my setup here. In fact, let's just go back into the zoomed in version of the what do you call it, menu, and I'll go into my audio settings, audio mixer, microphone 1 and 2. Those were the 2 microphones that came in via XLR. Here are my options. Enable which of the ports? Okay, interesting. This is something I didn't know until this very moment. So I have my audio settings here, right? I have microphone 1 and 2. I have 8 sources. I have program. That would be like the main audio. I got headphones and crossfade whenever you're auto switching, right? Now, I did show off earlier that it has those... I'll go to this camera. It's extremely zoomed in. Hold on. It has those 2 full-size XLR inputs, and it has 2 3.5mm audio inputs. However, it would seem that, based on what we're looking at here in the menu, is that you can't actually... let me just zoom over, or pan over a little bit. There you go. You can't actually use all 4 of those audio inputs at the same time. You will have to choose. So in this case, do I want my microphone 1 to be 3.5mm or to be XLR? So that means effectively there's 2 audio hardware inputs being used at one time, and not all 4. Maybe that's not a deal breaker for you, but good to know. So I'll change it to XLR, and it's got some options. Dynamic, condenser. Okay, so XLR, I only have the sort of mic type that I have connected up, whereas the 3.5mm, I can choose the mic and line level for that. Makes sense. I guess the XLR doesn't have phantom power, so I can only choose on and off. I can only choose XLR. Mic type, condenser, and dynamic. Would that potentially make changes there? Maybe I don't know enough to know otherwise. And it does have some preamp delay. So your question... Where did you go? Where did you go? Yeah, could the 2 XLRs inputs be switched to line and level? Unless those terms dynamic and what was the other option? Condenser kind of mean mic and line level in this context, which I don't think so. Oh wait, okay, here you go, cool. That's the 48 volts I was thinking earlier there. So if I turn that on, I will get the phantom power for the mic. Good to know. But that I would not consider mic and line level. So yes and no, but mostly no to your question. Let me cut back to the wide shot just so I don't confuse myself or you. So program is black now. That's because something, the NDI source was on the top. Okay, that makes sense. Last few questions. I've said that so many times now. Action replays, no. You wouldn't, in my testing here, you wouldn't be able to play and record at the same time. And usually when you can't do both at the same time, replay is a no-go because you kind of have to record the next thing before you get back. So you could, in theory, press record. And if something happens, you press stop. And then you could load up that clip and play it. But you'd have to find the place in the clip that it happened. And, you know, no. DaVinci Resolve project would be great. But how likely? Good question. I have no idea how likely that would be possible. But I would say extremely possible. I have no idea how likely. We'll have to ask them about that one. And no, there was no like project file in there of edits that I saw. No, it's just the video file. So none of that. That's a shame. But they could, in theory, add that. This is like, I would consider pretty early days for the switcher. So if enough people ask them for DaVinci Resolve files, I'm just looking through other files here while I'm chatting, then maybe it's possible for them to add it in there. Yes, the condenser has phantom power. Cool. I'm just so used to that being like a separate setting. I never really considered it to be popped under mic types. But I'm not an audio guy. And no project files. Technobuzz says, I believe the control app will be available either the 12th or the 17th of this month. Cannot remember the date exactly. Okay, cool. So within a few weeks, hopefully the actual Mac OS and Windows app will be available, and maybe there'll be more settings in there, but at least there'll be a way of changing settings a lot easier and hopefully get away from all these text files, and you could just paste URLs and stuff right into the software. That'd be great to see. Alan asking a question that I wanted to know the answer to myself. Are there any quality level settings for program and ISO records? I feel like I don't see any of those in here, and I would love to see them. So if I back off of this menu option and this audio mixer one, and I head down to settings, there's nothing about that in here. Version, disks, network settings, button brightness, profile, import, export, languages, advanced, user guide. If I go into record, I can choose the record file name, and I can choose the ISO channels to enable and disable. In streaming, I can choose to turn on and off and what streaming sources to go to. We never really talked about streaming, but effectively you can set up these 3 streaming sources and then stream to those, and load in the settings if you want. But I don't see any options for actual like settings. The only real, oh wait, did I see it there? Quality, there we go. Lovely. Okay, cool. This is not where I would have thought this would be, but this is where it is. So in my output options, I have a format, and I have output 1 and 2. It can be set in here as well. You can change those from the front, but that's good to know. Oh, and you can choose the output of the USB as well. So setting it into like a Zoom meeting or something like that. Color space, we talked about, but quality here, recording low. Okay, this is why things didn't look that great earlier. That's good. Medium, good, high. Those are your 1, 2, 3, 4 options. And then streaming would be the same. No, 3, medium, low, and high. So you can set the recording and streaming options, and I suspect that this recording option is program and all the ISOs as well. Lovely. There's an option there. I just didn't see it because it wasn't where I was looking for it. Vic just jumping in now, no problem. You can check it out later. And then Forrest says, this is not OC related, but do you have a playlist for beginner streamers on the channel? I don't really have one. I have like my show and tell series, which I cover a lot of this kind of stuff in. Over the years, I've made lots of videos about all this good stuff. So that would be a good place to go. There is a playlist called Show and Tell. Start from the start and you'll learn all sorts of stuff, I'm sure, along the way. Alrighty, I think that's a nice little dive into the Duet 8 ISO. I'm sure we'll cover it again in the future. I know that the team there have mentioned that updates are coming. And as we said, that the macOS and Windows app is in the works still, and or support for at least this device is in the works still. So super keen to cover that in a future live stream if those updates come out as well. Thank you a bunch for watching along, asking questions, sticking with me as I figured things out. Andy said, thanks, John. Thank you, Andy. Appreciate it. That just leaves me to thank you all for watching along, and thanks to the supreme supporters of the channel. Always nice to have you, Revolution, Lightboards, Marlon, and all of your faces who chatted today during the live stream. I guess I'll see you next week. We've got more stuff, more packages in the room over there that I want to look at in future live streams. So we will, no doubt, look at those in the future. Alrighty, until the next one. Bye-bye.